Hello, and welcome to Coffee with CR Group, 7 new features in SharePoint Online. So to get started, we're just going to cover over some housekeeping. Recording and slides will be sent out at the end. Please type any questions you have at any time, and they'll be answered at the end of the presentation. The coffee cards will also be sent out. If you're Canadian, they'll be Starbucks. If you're American, it's going to be Dunkin' Donuts. My name is Elizabeth Brown. I'm a business solution consultant here at Corporate Renaissance Group. I've worked here for the last 5 years, mainly with SharePoint, a few other things, but mainly with SharePoint. I've been working with SharePoint for a long time, about 15 years now. The agenda for today, we're just going to talk some new features from in Office 365 and SharePoint. Some of these they're all new, but some of them are extensions of existing features. So we'll talk a bit about list formatting, some of the look and feel updates, the mega menus, footers, connected Webparts, hub sites, and some out-of-the-box flows. So list formatting. Do you have a task list or a contact list in SharePoint? Does it look pretty plain and boring? So we'll find out how easy it is to create some custom formatting. Let's go take a look. We'll just close out of the presentation for 1 second. So you can see here we've got a task list, and it's just pretty plain. And there's a due date, and it would be nice, to like highlight the due dates and say, hey, what are these? So I can kind of click here, and I can say, go under column settings, and you see it's got this format this column. So when I select this, it comes up with this template fill background color. So I can select that, and then it sort of applies different formatting to it. It isn't quite what I want because this one's in the future and it's red, which isn't really what I want. So I can actually just go here and say edit the template. And so if it's before today, I want that actually really to be red because that's something that's been passed, right? I don't want it to be orange. So I can just come down here and change it. Is it today? Well, that's probably what I'd want to say. Hey, this should be finishing today. And if it's after, then I can just go say, we'll make it green. And then you see, just like that, it's applied. And then we've got these custom due dates so that we can kind of say, oh, this task is overdue and this one's not. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. This is out of the box. If you try to do this in your own tenant and you find that you don't see this feature, it is being released, but it's not released to every single tenant at once. This particular tenant is on first release, so it gets all the updates right away. Your own tenant, especially if it's a production tenant, you're not likely to want to do that, so it takes a bit longer. It should be rolled out soon by the end of the month, so you should see it shortly if you don't see it right now. So the same thing, I could go over to the task status and I could say, I want to format this column. So I can select the template and I can say, oh, look, it's filled in just like that, and it's showing the different sort of statuses, sort of different colors of blue. Again, I could come in here and edit the template if I wanted to. In this case, if I just wanted to say waiting on someone else, that's the only thing I wanted to do. The other thing I could do is I could come into advanced mode, and I can actually just apply different JSON here. Because of how this window looks, let's see if we can expand it so it looks a little bit better. So yeah, you can it basically is just creates the JSON and applies it for you. But if you want to create your own custom, you can do that and just put it in here. And then I can just preview that. Let me move this back across. And then you can see all I did was I wanted to highlight this waiting on someone else in red, and that's how it just changed the formatting. So there's quite a lot of flexibility with this what you can do for the columns, because you can just do it that way. And now, sorry, 1 second, I just need to move this. And so, so I just want to add another column over here. So I want to click Show Hide Columns. These options will add a new column to this list. And in this case, I don't want to add a new column. I just want to hide and show columns. So I want to do the % complete. And then I just hit Apply up here, and then that column's showing up here. But instead of just having it as a number, I want to do it as a process bar. So again, I can do the same thing. Click on the down arrow, click on Column Edit Settings, and click on Format This Column. And then you can see for this one, you only have the option for JSON. You don't have the sort of templated formatting for every column type, but you do have it for a lot. Let me just go and copy and paste the JSON. So if I hit preview, then you can see how that sets it up. So the 25 is just got one checked here. This one's got 3 because it was at 75. This was at 50, so it's halfway. And then this one's completed, so they're all checked off. So that's a pretty easy way to just kind of create some different formattings like on the here. You notice up here on this all items, so this is the view that we're looking at right now, and there's a little star next to it. All that's telling me is that I've made changes to the view and I haven't saved them. So if I go here and I do Save View As, I don't have to change the name. If I want to make it a new view, I can enter in a new name here, but I'll just hit Save, and then those changes are saved. So anytime I come into the list, this is the view I'll see where there's the due date formatting, some formatting on the task status, and % complete. So if you were looking at the JSON, which I'll actually just bring up here, it is pretty complicated. So if you're kind of not really sure how to get started, Microsoft has a bunch of free source stuff. It's provided, this guy actually works from Microsoft, so it is provided through Microsoft. And it's a number of different, so this one here is list formatting, and it's got a whole bunch of column samples. So you can come in here and say, oh, I want to do a multi-choice icon. And then you can kind of look at the code and you just modify it for how you need it to work. So there's quite a lot of samples here. So it's actually quite easy to get started even with the JSON, even though it is more complicated, just because Microsoft does provide this. And it's just on GitHub. If you search GitHub SharePoint SP Dev List Formatting, you'll see there's lots and lots of samples there. Sorry, wrong one. So what I've done here is I formatted each of the columns. But what if I want to format like the whole list and not just a column independently? So basically to do that, you can go into the view selector, and there's this format current view. And when you select that, you see again, you can put JSON in there, and you can just copy and paste it in there, and you have the preview and save options. So over here, we have some that are kind of set up. So this board one where it's just kind of got, it's like a message board where there's ride shares and books for sale. And you can see it's got quite a nice look to it. And if I actually go here, and you can see it's actually just a plain SharePoint list. Like that's all just done through, so this item is formatted, and then all it's done is it's got a whole bunch of JSON applied to it so that it's got this custom look and feel. And again, that can also be found on this SPDev list formatting GitHub one, where there's column samples and view samples. So view samples will show you the whole list, where column samples will show you a single column within the list. There's some other options. So you can have like a contact list, and then you can have maps and notes and little pictures, and do quite a lot of formatting so that it looks quite a lot more appealing. And then here are some variants on date format so that these ones are overdue, so they're showing up in red. Okay. So now we want to talk a bit about some of the new options to customize the look. If you think the SharePoint default look is too boring, or you just want to jazz it up a little bit, there's some new features that you can use to customize it. There's shading, there's the mega menu, there's footer, and you can do some connected web parts. as I said, there's some new features to customize the look of SharePoint. So we're just going to show some of these now. So we'll go back to this site and we're going to go to the SharePoint landing page here. You can see up here where it's got Create Site. So if I click on that, you can see that there's two types. There's communication and team sites. These are both done in the modern layout, so that there's two main types, communication and team. So a team is, you want to work, like you're working on a project, it's the department, it's people you work with, and everyone pretty much has the same level of access. You're wanting to collaborate together, and here's your space to do that. And a communication site is more like you're publishing content which other people are going to consume. So there's a smaller group of people who are making the content, and then a larger group of people who are coming in to consume the content. So basically, based on this, you can see that there's two types of sites, and because there's two types of sites, we'll look at both, and you'll see that there's going to be different options for each type of site. So if you are trying to do something and it's not there, it could be based on the site type. Another note with this create site link up here, if you don't see this create site link on your tenant, it's a security setting, because they can restrict it so that only certain people can create sites, and you might not have permissions to do that. So you might not see that create site, but it still applies that there's two types of sites. We want to go to this one. So this is the communication site here. It actually has some of the branding applied to it, but basically when you go to this little gear up here, you can see change the look, and when you come in, you can see there's a number of different features. Again, if you try this in your own tenant and you don't see these features, it's because they haven't been deployed to your tenant yet. So it is possible that they haven't been deployed to yours, but they are coming. So if you see the theme, this is probably should be familiar to most people who've worked with SharePoint for a while, because themes have been around for a while, and this theme was here. It's just they've added the header, navigation, and footer, so there's more options here than there were before. So if I click on theme, you see it has current selection, and then this company theme, these are all custom themes that were created, where it's just going to change the colors applied to the whole site. There's a number that are provided out of the box from Microsoft. Some of them, like this one, actually doesn't seem that friendly. Some of them are better, but you can pick different ones. If you want to click customize, you can say, I want to make this the main color and change the accent color. That's probably a really horrible combination, so don't try and do that. But you can kind of come in and modify the themes as you wish. Sorry, let me go back to change the look. So that's some of the things you can do with the themes. What's new here is you have a header. So with the layout, there's a sort of standard header where that's the width, and then there's a compact one where hopefully everyone just saw how this is now smaller. I'll kind of just demo that again. So you can see with the standard, this is like wider, it takes up more of the page. So if there's a lot of content you have down here and you don't want this much of the real estate of the page lost, you can make it compact so that it's a lot smaller. The site logo is pretty explanatory. It's just a little icon you can put here. For this demo, we just went with the kittens, because who doesn't like kittens? But you can always just change or remove it. So then it will just go back to putting a default letter if you've done that. The other thing they have here is the background. So you can say, I just want it to be white. I want it to be slightly shaded. I want it to be a little bit offset from, so this color and that color is slightly offset. So there's a little bit of emphasis on it, but not as well. That gives it more because it's whiter. And then you can also make it quite dark. Again, it just depends on what your sort of preferences are, but that's sort of some easy changes you can make here. If I click save, that will save the changes. So that's how you can, sort of the interesting things you can do with the header there. With the navigation, there's mega menu and cascading. So cascading, I think, if I just go save that, everyone's kind of pretty used to that. you pick business units, and then you have under there's, sorry, shouldn't have clicked that link, sorry. So you can come in and you can pick your business unit, and then once you hover over here, you're going to get the sub-menu showing up. So that's been around for a while. Basically, when you've created it, it's sort of, here's like a header, and then you have a sublink, and then a sublink under the sublink, right? But if you wanted to, instead, what you can do is you can switch the look. Instead of using the sort of standard cascading, if you don't have a lot, it might actually make sense to keep with it. But the mega menu does provide a nice look and feel, which, just one second, it kind of groups things nicely. It looks a lot cleaner. It takes up more space, but I feel like this is a nice division, and it kind of helps. It does look really nice. So that's the new mega menu feature. And again, all you have to do is apply it there. And then when you set up the links over here, just make sure you've got sublinks under a sublink under a heading, and you're good to go. Cancel out of that. So the last sort of change the look feature on a communication site that you'll see is there's a footer. So I can just turn that footer off, and you see it's gone now. You can turn it back on. You can add a logo. You can change it. You can just pick an image. And then it's got a different logo down there. You can put a footer name on there. So I can call this company links. If I don't want that there, I can, let me get my eye. So basically if I save that, I'll just show that first. So you see how it's got here company links, so that's showing the name there. If you don't want that, you can just turn that off again. So you can see it's just vanished from there. And then you can also put in some footer navigation links. So again, it's the same sort of look and feel as like the header navigation links, where if you hover here, you can just add a new link. I'll just use Google just to make this quick, and I will type or I can call it employee list. So there's a header and a URL link there, options there, but I'll make that a URL. So then I can just, so you can see there's the different links. You can move up, you can edit the links, and you can remove the links. So pretty similar. You can't really do the sublinks, but that makes sense because it's all going to be down at the bottom. Let me just save that, and then I'm going to save it over here in this panel. And then we just have to wait for 1 second. And then you can see that employee list link has shown up, which, because I just set it to Google, if I click on that, it's going to take me over to Google. So, but this is a useful way that if you have information like you want to put your HR policies or news links, and you want to make sure that they're on every single page, or how to get help from IT is on every page, because when you navigate throughout the site, it will actually stick around. So it can be useful for that. So those are what you can see with like the sort of communication site. And as I mentioned, there's two types of site. There's the communication site, and then there's also the team site. So we'll just go to the marketing team site. So this is a site for the marketing team to come in, and they can all work together. So they've got some documents. They've got like activity list down here, which is showing like which documents people have created recently, some news so that they can share with each other. And so again, it's the same place. You go up to the gear, and you've got change the look. And so this time you see there's a lot of different options. There's only theme and header, so you can't put a footer here, which based on how it looks, I think kind of makes sense. So it's just going to have different options. So the theme option, again, as you can see, it has sort of the current selection. I can go change that to this gray one. If I want to customize it slightly, I have the same options, make it a darker gray, etc. So you can just come in and change the theme like that. And then within the header itself, it's the same thing. You can say, I want to make it compact, I want to make it smaller, or no, I want it bigger. No, you want it compact because you want to use more parts of the real estate of the screen for the actual content and less for the headers. And you can change the logo and just pick a file, and let's pick this one. And so you can have a site logo created up there. You can change the background of the header, so I can make it a very dark blue. I can make it a sort of light gray. I can make it this sort of continuous gray, or I can just make it white. So you have some options about how you can kind of modify it. It's the same as what you can do in the communication site. It's just there's fewer options because you can't, you don't have the mega menu option for the navigation, and you don't have the footer at the bottom. So pretty similar, but a few different options. So if I wanted to, I can also go over to here and I can create new. There's this news link, which is a fairly new feature. So if I click that, and let's say I want to share this GitHub repository, so I can just, sorry, I need to go back here, just copy and paste it in here, and then it's going to bring up the page information, and it's going to give me a sort of default title based on it and a description based on what it pulled from the page, and it's going to put a preview image here. I mean, I can change this if I want to, pick up something else, or I can just say I'm going to post it like this. And then it's created a new news page with a link to that article. So when I click on that, it's actually going to take me right to that site, but it shows up here as news. So if there is like a news article, say like a stock price, or there was a merger between companies, or anything else like that, depending on what your particular business, that you thought, hey, I want to broadcast this to everyone, you can actually do a news link and have it appear as a news page within your site. This also means that on the SharePoint landing page, it will show up here as a new news document. I'll come back in a few minutes because it actually just takes a moment for the news to come up. It's not instantaneous. So the other thing is if I went and created a new news post, and then it's going to create a new page here. So basically, because I'm logged in as Isabel Moran on this account, it just shows up here automatically as this user that's associated for this page. If I wanted to, I could take that out. I could put in, if I said, well, actually, I feel like Doug, who is a user here, but it's not finding him. Well, if it found him, then I could put him in. You can change the user associated. By default, it's going to be the user that's logged in, or you can just remove it if you don't think that's useful. Then again, so you can change the image. This is basically, you can pick images from the website. If you are picking images from the web, just make sure that the ones you're picking you actually have access to. Like this says Commons Wikimedia, so it should be okay to use. But if you do start publishing content, you should just be careful about copyrights, that you aren't taking copyrighted images and putting them on your website. And then you can just drag and cut a focal point. So then you have this option to reset to the default image, or you can just change where you want to put the focal point, as well as change the image. There's also these edit web part options. So creating the sort of image on the back end with a focal point, that's been around for a while, but this little new edit option, a lot of this is new, where you can say, actually, I just want it to be really plain, or I want to do a color block, which doesn't look really great with these colors, but you could actually modify the blue and make it look nicer. You can do an overlap like that. I'm just going to go back. That actually might make it easier to read depending on the text color. I'll go back like this for now. You can say where you want the alignment, If you wanted to add text above the title, you can add like that. It's going to just pick up the theme color is blue on this site. That's why that's blue. So if you didn't want that to be blue, you just go and modify what theme you're using. But like I say, actually, no, don't show that, or do show it. This isn't, if you have nothing here, then this action is automatically set to no. So it doesn't allow you to set it to yes if you don't have text above the title. If you felt like this information was only going to be relevant for a particular date, it's not going to be relevant forever. You can say, hey, show the published date. So it just says draft saved because I haven't published it yet. But it does mean that I could, when I actually publish it, when I go up here and say post news, it's going to have the date, so the 19th. And then that means if someone comes back sort of 6 months from now, they can say, oh, that's the news from the 19th, March 19th, but hey, there was this later one. So it can be useful if it's something that you feel like it's going to be superseded or that the date does matter to show that. So then this is for the alternate text is for screen readers for people who have vision issues, so that if they're using a screen reader, that then it describes this section for them. So that's an option you can provide in there as well. So these are some new options within the title area that you can do. Within the web part itself, so there's what's now called a connected web part, so you can actually have web parts that talk to each other. It's really funny to say this is new because you could do this in all sorts of earlier versions of SharePoint, but when they came out with the modern experience, you lost the ability to have these things happen out of the box, but now they've added it back in. So I'm just picking a document library, and then I'm just going to pick documents. And so it's just showing all the documents on the site. And then if I go over here and I do file viewer, and then it's saying, okay, pick a recent document or pick a document from your OneDrive or from a site or upload or from a link, which isn't what I want to do because what I want to do is connect it to the other one. So I'm just going to cancel out of that. And then you see if I click on this little pencil and I get edit the web part, and then it actually tells you what you have to do, how you can add a file to your web page, and that you can select a bunch of different file sources, Excel, Word, Visio, etc. And that it says you can also connect to a source to dynamically view files. So what you have to do is you click here on these three little ellipses, and then you do connect to source, and then you basically, it's going to give you what's already on the page. So I'm going to pick documents, and there's this remove connection link. So if later on I want to change this connection to a different document source, or I just want to go make it static, then I can remove that connection. Do I have a? Should be good. So now if I post this as news, and then, yeah, so then you see on the file view, it says this web part, let me go back to my news page 1 second. So you see on the file viewer, what it says here is it's just telling it's connected to documents, and that if I select a document over here, I'll see the contents here just in Word Online. So that's like a fake invoice. This, I think, might just be some Lorem Ipsum. So it can be useful, like if you had a bunch of sort of policy documents, and then people could kind of flip through them quickly and say, what is it that I want to do? And within here, you can kind of scroll through documents. It tells you the number of pages. You can click on this to make it full screen, so you can see it a lot bigger, and then it's just opening it in Word Online. If people have rights to edit documents, then they could go edit it in the browser or edit it in Word. If they didn't have edit rights to it, they wouldn't see that at all. And then here you can have, there's some options for the file viewer where you can download a copy, or you can print it to a PDF, which just isn't. Accessibility mode, so again, that's if you have, you're using like a screen reader, it will actually start reading off what's in the document. Because this is Latin, it might really struggle with that. But if it were a language, like if it were in English, it'd probably work a lot better. And then if you wanted to give some feedback, you can go and give some feedback there as well. So So that's the sort of file viewer web part and the connected web part. So how this is done with documents in a file viewer web part, you can also do the same thing with, well, actually just go into the edit view and show it. It's probably a bit easier. So there's a list web part here. So that will give you, if you have a custom list on the site or like a task list, you can pick this, and then you can pick the list properties, which will then, you can connect these two together so that you can actually see the details of the selected item in the list in this list property website. So it works pretty much the same way. So we'll just discard changes and revert back. And now, so now if I wanted to go back over here, I could go back to SharePoint and then I could go back to the landing page. And then from here, I can go to like recent sites and then, yeah, so you can see that GitHub, the news link I posted has shown up here. So if I want to find out more about it, I could just click on that and then that's going to take me to that GitHub, directly to the GitHub. If I click on, hey, I want to find out more about this Coffee with Sierra Group webinar news post, when I click on it, it will take me to that news post. But then because I'm on this marketing site, and then if I want to go back to a different SharePoint site, I can click on SharePoint and it will take me back there. That is, I mean, it does work for navigation, and especially because I'm following these sites, they all show up here. To follow a site, bring this up, you can see right up here, it's saying, hey, you're following it. So if I stop following it, then that means it's not going to show up on this following. It might show up in my recent site if I go there a lot, but it won't show up here. It does take a moment to update. These things aren't instantaneous when you stop and start following. But if I want to follow again, I could just click like that. So the following is useful for navigation that way, but it does mean that people can sort of struggle how to find things. What used to happen with SharePoint was you'd have sort of the main site and then you create subsites underneath it. So like this is a SharePoint 13 site, and so you can see that's what you kind of see along the top. So if I went into the site content, you got a main site here at the top, and then I go down, I can see there's a bunch of subsites, and those are all sort of showing up here along the top. And if I went into the site settings for this site and I wanted to look at the navigation, what it's saying is it's just going to say it's following the structure. Structure and navigation, display the navigation items below the current site, so show all the subsites. So that worked really well in SharePoint 2013 for a lot of cases where people had a very hierarchical site. They had a top level site and they created a whole bunch of subsites. But with SharePoint Online, they sort of stopped using it that way. They decided that each of these sort of, when you're coming in here to create a site, you're going to create a whole sort of site club. So you're creating the top level site and you're not going in and creating the subsites. It's so that if you want to link that site to a group, you can kind of do that easier. Well, it creates an Office 365 group behind, but if you want to link it to a team, it's easier to do so. But it does mean that everything's sort of created at this top level, and then you can navigate back and navigate forward, but it's not necessarily as, it can be nice to have sort of an enforced navigation structure across it. So that's what hub sites are designed to fix. In order to set up a hub site, you used to only be able to do it with some PowerShell scripting, but they have actually allowed you to, they've updated the UI in the admin center so that you can now go in and make a main level hub site. So once I'm in here, so this is the classic SharePoint admin center, and then you see I still have a link to this new SharePoint admin center, so you've got to go there. Your tenant might have changed that you actually go directly to the new one. And then basically under the sites, you just go and you see all the sites. So if I go find the one, let's say this one, and I want to make, I'm going to say I'm going to register that as a hub site. And then I just give it a display name. So I'm going to call it company demo. And then you get to pick people who can associate the sites with this hub site. So whoever you want to have the ability to add sites to the sub-sites, you can add a couple of different people here. I'm only going to add myself. And so now that site is updated. So if I go here to the TEFCOM site, you can see that up here, it's got this company demo add link. So this is what's called as the hub site navigation. This will show up across the whole every single site. So if I went to the HR site here, and I'm just waiting for it to load. So if I click over here on the gear, and then there's this site information. So if I click on that, you can see there's a bunch of information. There's like the site logo. So if I wanted to change the site logo, if I wanted to change the name, so if I decided I wanted this to be human resources instead of HR, I can just change that there. I can add in a description. So because this is a team site, there's two levels. There's private, which only members can access, and public, so that anyone in the organization can access. So you can change that setting. And you can also come in here and say, I want to associate this with the company demo. And so that's going to apply associated to that hub site. So I'll just save it like that. And so just wait for that to run through. And then you can see that company demo link has shown up here. So if I click on that, that's going to take me to this sort of communication site automatically. Now, if I went, going to do some copying and pasting. I added a link here. Again, this is a very familiar interface. It's pretty much the same as what you've seen before in terms of how things are going. So then I can just put HR. If I do that, there's a header, and if I selected header, then you don't have to put an address, which doesn't help here. So I want to make sure that I select a URL, and then I can put a display name and click OK. The headers are nice if you want to group things together and you don't want the main header link to be selectable. And so when I click Save, then you can see there's added that link there. And so when I go click on HR, because I've associated with the hub site, I can see the company demo and this HR here. So it's kind of really a useful thing in terms of that now you can kind of associate things together, and it's a bit easier for navigation to navigate across here. The other thing that should happen is that the themes that are applied, so this green color here, is also going to be applied to the HR site so that the theme is going to be constant. As in so much as you don't actually see the green footer here, but it does actually see this is green, and I think before it was blue, so it has applied the same theme as the company demo. If you do create a main level hub site, and you then attach a site to it, and you notice that the theme on the sites haven't aligned, it could be because you haven't customized the theme on the top level hub site. You need to customize the theme to make a change to it so it's not completely default. Then register it as a hub site and associate sub-sites to it. And when you start associating sites, when the theme has been customized, then it will pick it up. But if you customize it afterwards, when it hasn't been customized before, then it doesn't pick it up. I hope that's clear, because if you customize it at first and then you apply it, it all just flows through. But if you don't customize it at first, even though you customize it afterwards, it doesn't flow through. But if you normally customize it after, if you have customized it before and then you customize it later, you make changes, those changes will flow through. You just need to have it customized first, and then it picks it up. Hopefully that's something that Microsoft will fix, because it's kind of a little confusing that it doesn't pick it up right away in some cases. But that's something that we'll just have to wait and see if that happens. So I'm just going to go to Teams here in the browser. Because it's Office 365 and everything sort of talks together, it is recommending that I use the Teams desktop app. but I don't want to do that because I signed out of it so that no one would bug me during the webinar. So when you click on it, you have, if you haven't seen Teams, I'll just do a quick overview. There's this chat window here, so you can talk to people. Everyone in the team can communicate and just sort of chat to here. But you also can store files. And if you look at the files, you can add cloud storage, but the default location is just SharePoint. So if I click open in SharePoint, then you can see that this is just a sort of a SharePoint team site that's connected to a Microsoft team. And because it's a team site, it means that if I wanted to, I could come in here and do the site information and say, hey, I want to associate it with my company demo hub site. And so let's just save that change. And then once it's finished loading, yep, you can see I can now, so if anyone was in the accounting team and they said, oh, I need to open this in SharePoint, and then once they're in SharePoint, they wanted to go to the company demo, the top level site, they can actually get there, or if they need to go over to HR, they could get there. So it does make navigating a little bit easier instead of saying, wait, I have to go back to the SharePoint landing page and then try to figure out where I want to go. And so it's useful because you can link different things together. Let me just, sorry, I have a lot of tabs open here. So now that I'm back on the HR site, the other thing I can do is if I've created this team site for HR, and they're using it for a bit, and then they're talking to accounting and realize accounting has a team, and they get to just chat with each other, and they're like, hey, we really want that. And then you're like, oh, well, now I'm going to create a new team for them, but it's actually going to, but they already have a team site, so then they'll have two SharePoint sites. What you can actually do is there's this new feature here, newish, down in the corner where it says Microsoft Teams, communicate with your colleagues, right? So what you can actually do is click create a team, and that's going to create the HR team that's associated with the site. And so then you see it says success. And so, yeah, it's going to try and open. I'm just going to say use the web app so that it doesn't try to open my local teams. And then you can see I've created a new team here. And that everyone who was in that Office 365 group that had access to it would now have access to this site. So one of the other things that you can do, so I just showed you how you can connect a SharePoint team site and turn it to a team. You can also do it from here. So if I click create a join a team, it should give you, now of course my options aren't showing up. Yeah, so if I click on the create a team link, so you can have an option to build a team from scratch or create from an existing Office 365 group or team. And when you create a SharePoint team site, it creates an Office 365 group behind. So I can click this one, and then I can say I want to do the marketing site. And so now I've also just converted the marketing SharePoint site into a team as well. So you can do it from Teams or you can do it from SharePoint if you do find that you want to convert your existing team sites, SharePoint team sites into a team. It is possible. So out of the box Microsoft flows. So SharePoint, Microsoft has provided a couple of new flows that are just out of the box flows that give you some features that can be kind of useful. So if you have like Word documents or Excel documents in your OneDrive, but you don't want to share the Word document with someone, you just want to share it as a PDF so that people can come in and look at it, and if they want to comment, they have to use like the PDF functionality and they're posting a comment, and it's a little bit harder for them to kind of go in and edit the text. There is a sort of flow to provide that functionality. Also with like task lists and due dates, you can now have sort of notifications. So any list or library where there's a date field that isn't date created and date modified, which are the out of the box, every time you create a library or a list, you have date created and date modified. But if you have an additional field like due date or custom date even, as long as you have an extra date field, then there's going to be a reminder flow that you can create that will notify you on the due date or prior to the due date. So those are kind of the out-of-the-box flows. So let me go here to my task list. So on this task list, for each of these items, there's going to be a date created and a date modified. But there's also a due date and a start date. So these are like customized date fields. So basically, when I click on the flow here, and then I just practice a little bit of patience, this set reminder shows up. And so I can say I want to set reminder on the due date or the start date. So if I said I want to be reminded on the due date, and then I just have to wait for the flow to sort of initialize and get started. So I can say, remind me this many days in advance. So if I want to be notified 3 days in advance, and I'll get an email with reminder, and then I can just go create. And then it's actually creating that flow. And so if I went into flows, I'd see this reminder flow for due date was created. And it basically means 3 days before any of these due dates, I will get an email notification. In this case, because there isn't assigned to, you might want to go in and edit that flow a little bit and say only if it's assigned to me as well. But it's pretty straightforward to do that, to have a reminder sent to you out of the box, and not just on the due date or so many days before. You can't do it afterwards, unfortunately. It has to be before or on the due date. So that's a list with a custom date. If I went to this documents library and I decided I just wanted to add a column called date, and so I'm just going to call this custom date. I don't want the time included. I don't need it to be a friendly format. I can just go like that. And then it's added that column there. And then once I've done that, the set of reminder on the custom date will show up. And I can again do the same thing. I can wait while this comes up, and I can say, remind me so many days in advance. So remind me a week in advance, and create, and then that will create the flow. I won't actually create it because I don't have anything in these custom dates, so it will never run anyways. But that's kind of one of the new out-of-the-box workflows. And then the other one I was discussing is if in your OneDrive, so if I have this particular document here, and if I wanted just to make that a PDF, I have this copy as a PDF, and I just run the flow. And once it actually runs really quickly, I'll just refresh it. You should see there's a new document there. Yeah, you can see this new document was created. It just depended the date that it was created on the end of it, and it's a PDF version of this document down here. So it's a pretty empty document, but there's the PDF version of it. The other workflow that you quite frequently see out of the box everywhere is request sign-off, which basically just allows you to enter in, you get to select a user and enter in a message and say, so you just put in who you want to approve it. So you could actually put yourself, which is kind of silly, but you can. And then you just put in a message here, and it's saying that both of these fields are required. But then that will run the flow, and it will send an approval task to the person specified there. So that flow is also this request sign off. You can see that around it. It gets added to libraries as well. So to recap, there's a number of new formatting features in SharePoint that allow you to create your own custom experience. You can see the mega menu, there's the footer, there's custom sort of shading along the top on the sort of communication site and the team site, and also within a news post where you can kind of format more on the title section than you used to be able to do before. The themes have been around for a while, so they're not particularly new. There's also the connected Webparts, which are new, so you can connect a document library to a viewer based on that library. So that's nice that you're able to link items together. Hub sites are great for navigating between different sites and applying a common look and feel. You probably saw that in terms of how tricky it was, because in terms of navigating within different sites without the hub site feature, because you're kind of always going back to the landing page and looking for which site you want to go to. If you have a lot of sites in your organization, it could be quite time consuming, so having hub sites to kind of cut a navigation could be really useful. And there's some out-of-the-box flows, sort of create a PDF and notifications, the reminder emails, which can be quite useful. Any questions? So, okay, there's one about where can I find out about new features going forward? So let me just go here. So basically, if you Google Microsoft Office 365 roadmap, you'll find this Microsoft 365 roadmap, which I'll just bring up here. And it's based on different sections. So there's Office 365, there's Windows 10 as well. So if I just want to see what's coming in Teams, so there's a new calendar app that's going to replace the meeting apps in Teams. They think that's going to come out in April of this year. Flow can notify individual users within Teams. So that's rolling out. It should be out in April. So again, you can do stuff on the statuses, and you do a bunch of filtering and say, oh, show me just what's coming out. Some calling. So you see there's quite a lot of, there's 7 in development, 3 are rolling out, and 69 have been launched. Again, you can see Admin Center, what's changing. There's quite a big list here. There's SharePoint up there. So there's a number of updates to the Admin Center. They're creating a central asset library. So that's like if you want to have a logo file that's used in a whole bunch of sites, then you can store it in that asset library. So you can see there's quite a lot. Drag and drop to order navigation is coming, which I think would be really useful. Sticky column headers, so that if you're in a document library and you're scrolling down, all the headers are going to stay. So all these up here, as you keep scrolling, see now they vanish, but that's supposed to be sticky, so that's coming. So there's some nice new features coming as well. But if you kind of want to see what's coming, the roadmap site is useful and tells you what's coming. And you can see there's 35 in development and 19 rolling out, so there's quite a lot coming. Okay, let me see, is there any other questions? Is there a way to request a new feature that I particularly want? So again, if you Google Microsoft user voice, so you see here user voice custom feedback for Microsoft Office 365. So it's office365.uservoice.com, and basically you can come in and there's a bunch of different products here, so like Office 365 admin, but there's also SharePoint. So you can kind of come in and say, Office 365 groups, if that's what you want it. And you can see, I want to be able to nest groups. I want to create folders. I want to convert a shared mailbox to an Office 365 group. And you can see a number of people have voted on it. So the ones that are most popular, like this one has over 2,000 votes. So that's possible that Microsoft will actually do it, because they do kind of listen to this based on the number of votes. So yeah, if there's a feature that you want that you don't see, and you don't see it in the roadmap, if you come here, you can search first, because quite often you'll find that someone else has already requested it, and just go and vote on their IDs. To vote, you just have to sign in. You can sign in with your Office 365 tenant ID, and then you'll be able to vote. Where are you getting the scripts, for the JSON scripts? So like I said, I created those myself, but this, the GitHub, so it's the github.com/SharePoint/SP-dev-list-formatting. If you go there, or if you just search GitHub SharePoint list formatting, you'll probably find it. It's pretty popular. They have a whole bunch of column samples and view samples. The ones I did today, basically, they were modified. None of these follow exactly. So you might be able to use it exactly, depending on what it wants, but you might need to just make a few little changes so you can get it to do exactly what you want it to do. So there's another question about what was the cost for using Flow. So Flow licensing is a little bit complicated. So hopefully this bear with me a little bit. I might just Google it because it can get a bit complicated. So with your Office 365 tenants, most people, when they have Office 365, they have like the business plan, so like, or they have like an enterprise plan, like an E3. So most of those plans will include Flow, and what they do is they'll include 2,000 flows per month per user. So if you had 10 people in your tenant, and so 2,000 per user, so you'd have 20,000 flows that you could run per month. So you could have one user run 20,000 flows, or you could have 2 users run 10,000 flows, or you could have 5 users. Like it's 2,000 per user is the limit, but not each user has to run it. But what gets more complicated is what you want to connect to with the flow. So you see there's like a flow plan 1 and a flow plan 2. So if you want to, the flow plan 2 does allow greater number of flows, and the flow plan 1 gives you more flows. So if you need more flows, that's helpful. The Flow 3 is a separate product because the Office 365 includes a different variant of Flow that's not included here. But what happens with the Flow Plan 1 is it gives you these premium connectors, so you can connect to more data sources. So if you want to connect to something like Salesforce, if you're just using the flow that's provided with Office 365, you wouldn't be able to connect to Salesforce. You can connect to SharePoint, you can connect to Outlook, you can connect to Teams. So you can do quite a lot with those flows, but you can't go to something like Salesforce or anything else that needs a premium connector. When it's talking about the 3-minute checks, so what it's saying is that it will check for the trigger every 3 minutes, and the Flow Plan 2, you can see it's 1-minute checks. The sort of Office 365 flow plan, it checks about every 5 minutes or so, so it's in between. It's not quite as often, but it's still often enough that things happen pretty quickly. I hope that answered your question. It really depends on what you're trying to do with the flow in terms of licensing. But if you're just working within Office 365, there's no additional cost. All right, thanks so much, and we will be in touch shortly with the coffee card link.